Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. It is Saturday and we're going to talk about some books today. I got Minnie and Mickey on my cup this morning because one of the books that we're going to talk about is One Little Spark, Mickey's 10 Commandments and the Road to Imagineering by Marty Sklar. Also going to talk about Dave Barry Does Japan, my favorite of Dave Barry's books. And we're going to talk about Extreme Measures, the newest Vince Flynn that I have finished recently. Appreciate everybody joining me, comments. If you got recommendations for books, let me know. Hopefully a book or two that I share on these programs will inspire you to read them or to read something else. Doesn't really matter what you read, as long as you're enjoying it, learning from it, and working it into your daily schedule, because reading really does open the world. There are so many books on so many topics. We can't read them all. So choose the ones that you enjoy and that you want to learn from the most. Good morning, Kellen. Appreciate you being here. Hope you're having a wonderful Saturday morning. Before I start in on the books, I do want to remind people, sign up for the Enjoy Life Safely newsletter. That's something you should be reading. Information to make your life better. Tips on staying safe, enjoying life, being exceptional. Goes out every Sunday. Go to enjoylifesafely.com, sign up, and you won't miss an issue. Good morning, Vicki. Good morning, Jay. Appreciate you guys being here. Hope you're having a great morning. So let's talk about some books today. The first book, One Little Spark, Mickey's 10 Commandments and The Road to Imagineering, because it's actually two books in one, and that's why that subtitle is important. The first half of the book talks about Mickey's 10 Commandments, and these are coming from a guy that worked over 50 years with Disney on many of the parks. He rose up to the head of the Imagineering department. And so the commandments are things like know your audience, wear your guest shoes, organize the flow of people and ideas, create a weenie or a visual magnet, communicate with visual literacy, avoid overload, create turn-ons, tell one story at a time, avoid contradictions, maintain identity, and for every ounce of treatment, provide a ton of treat. Commandment 10, keep it up, maintain it. So those are the commandments. And he goes through and explains those. And they're very good commandments for anything that we really wanted to do, any kind of business and so forth. And then he gives examples of where Disney did something right when it came to that commandment. And he gives an example where Disney didn't follow that commandment and things that weren't as successful. So you learn from the successes and the things that weren't successful. Won't call them complete failures, but they weren't up to standards. And so you learn a lot from both of those. And I think those 10 commandments could be incorporated into many things in many businesses. The second half of the book, The Road to Imagineering, is an excellent primer for anyone that's interested in going into that field. If you have a young one, a kid that wants to go into Imagineering and the creative things, especially for Disney, a lot of good practical advice. Marty talked to, I forget how many, but there were a ton of different people that contributed and told their stories of how they got into Imagineering, and the paths vary just like the people vary. And they provide advice of somebody wanting to get into that field, things they could do that would help them. So the second half of the book is really focused on that, but some of the advice is just very motivational and could apply to just about anything as far as sticking to it, being creative, not giving up, and so forth. So it really is sort of two books in one, and the first part is very different than the second part. But I enjoyed it all, and I thought it was a really good book. Especially would be good if anybody's interested in entering the field of Imagineering and wanted a little motivation and a little insight into the field. So I enjoyed this one quite a bit. I'm going to stop and say good morning to Dixon. Appreciate Dixon showing up. Sparky, every radio operator ever. And Phil. Good morning, Kellen and Alan. Good morning, Phil. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate everybody that joins and says hello. Second book, Dave Barry Does Japan. I reread this because it's sort of in the list. I'm downsizing my library and we're downsizing a lot of things. And so I read this again. The first time I read this, I was actually living in Japan and it really hit home. You know, some of the stuff he was talking about. Reading it this time brought back fond memories of living in Japan. And, you know, Dave Barry is a humorist. If you like Dave Barry's stuff, you'll probably enjoy this. This is my favorite of Dave Barry's just because of having lived in Japan, having read it when I was in Japan, and it just recognizing so many things he wrote about, and then enjoyed it this time because I got to remember some things and some fond memories of living in Japan, and this brought back some of those. So I enjoyed reading this. A good, quick, light read, humorous. And if you've ever been in Japan or lived in Japan, it'll strike home a little bit more. And the last book this morning, Vince Flynn's Extreme Measures. Continuing saga of Vince Flynn and the CIA and their trying to protect the United States while they combat different people in Washington, D.C. that don't agree with their means. And the extreme measures they're talking about in here is how extreme should we get with terrorists when they're trying to kill Americans, and torture might be the only way to get information from them to save Americans. Should we go there? Should we not? And that's sort of a theme that's explored in this book. If you're familiar with Vince Rapp, you'll know that he's hard charging and he'll do whatever it takes to keep the country safe. But there are those that believe that he goes too far. And his argument is extreme times might take extreme measures. So very fun, exciting thriller with the political stuff that Vince Flynn weaves in there with Washington, D.C. and those that don't agree with maybe what the CIA and other agencies are doing. So enjoyed it. It goes right into the next one. I mean, boom, the next book, I'm already reading it right now because it starts immediately after this. So if you are reading Vince Flynn's books or want to read Vince Flynn's books, it does help to read them in order. You wouldn't have to. I mean, it could stand alone. It's a great book, but definitely they do go in order, and it's better to read them in order because they follow and pick up on things. And some of the characters and stuff that's going on, you'll have better insight if you've read the earlier books. So do start at the beginning if you want to read this series, and it'll make a little bit more sense and be a little bit more enjoyable that way. So those are the books this morning. Japanese nostalgia. Yep. I mean, I lived there in the 90s. You know, that book was written in the early 90s, right before I lived there. And so it was a fresh book, a new book, and I was living there when I first read it. And now just reading it again brought back those memories. All sound good to add to reading. Yes, I enjoyed all three of these books. Obviously, I'm a Disney fan. Marty, having worked with Disney and sharing the stories of the park, which relate to business success, for any endeavor, really enjoyed. Dave Barry, just a fun, humorous, quick, light reads, entertaining. The one about Japan, my favorite of all of his. And Vince Flynn, just great, thrilling type novels. There's a reason why he's on the bestseller list. He writes a good book, or he wrote good books. They're now being written by other people that have picked up the Mitch Rapp stories because Vince passed away from cancer. I believe there's one more after this or so that he wrote. I mean, this is getting close to the end of the books that he wrote before he passed away. And then they continue the stories with other authors. And I actually just learned one of the authors I like, and his name's escaping me. It's on the top of my head, but he wrote some of the recent Tom Clancy Jack Jr. novels that I have enjoyed, because obviously Tom Clancy that passed away, and they have different authors that have carried on those character stories. He is actually going to be stopping the Jack Ryan Jr. novels and is going to start working on some Mitch Rapp novels and will be carrying the torch for Mitch Rapp. I'll talk about him later in a different episode, but I just learned that yesterday. And so that was sort of interesting because I enjoyed him with Jack Jr. So I'm sure I'll probably enjoy some of the Mitch Rapp stories even beyond after Vince passed away as well. That's what I wanted to share today. Be sure to go out, read a book, Kindle book, audiobook, listen to it, paper book, whatever format you want, that doesn't matter. Just pick something that you enjoy or that you can learn something from and apply to your life, something that'll make you laugh, something that'll make you stay up at night excited to turn the pages. Doesn't matter as long as you're enjoying it. World of wealth out there in books. Take advantage of them. Enjoy them. And be sure to get that newsletter on the reading list too. You'll enjoy that and might even learn something to help keep you safe, help you enjoy life, help you be exceptional. With that, I will ask you to please make it a spectacular Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow.